Spooks fans, and welcome to Day 4 of SHOCKTOBERFEST 2023. I know the last episode was kind of a gimme, it was a mulligan. It was a very short episode. So today we're going to be talking about a movie that isn't necessarily near and dear to my heart, but it's a sequel to a movie that is near and dear to my heart. We're going to be talking about 1987's Creepshow 2. Yeah, we're going into this one, folks. I'll try to make sure that I don't give too much away, but at the same time, yeah, I have to give a little bit. So in the stories in this movie, the second one, legit, is written by Stephen King. The other two, I have to do a little bit more research, but I mean, they're around the same ideas of the horror meister himself, as well as George A. Romero. So in this movie, instead of 5 stories, we get 3. They narrowed it down.
Then shalt thou count to 3. No more, no less.
Kind of abridged. Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? Our first story is called Old Chief Woodenhead. It's about a old married couple that is out in the middle of nowhere in the desert. They're running pretty much a mom and pop store. They're down on their luck, not really having a lot of money, and pretty much the people in charge are of an Indian reservation. And in this story, the high chief of the Indian reservation comes to this couple and says he's going to give them the Aline because they have been very grateful for all the credit and all the things that they have done for their land. And unfortunately, the old man says he doesn't know if he can take it, but the chief says, no, you have to, because if you give it back to us, we become beggars again. Well, after this takes place, the chief's nephew comes in with his little band of merry bullies, and they've been stealing from these people from before. So they come in and basically say, you know, we're going to steal from you, and we know that my uncle gave you these things, we're going to take them too. Well, the old man and his wife are a little bit leery about it, and unfortunately they meet their demise via shotgun. Well, the nephew and his buddies, they drive off, and yet there's one thing I forgot to mention. There is a wooden chief statue outside of the store named Old Chief Woodenhead that the old man paints, takes care of. He comes to life, and he does not like what he sees. So he wreaks revenge on all 3. Now we're going to talk about the second story in the movie called The Raft. It's about a group of young college kids. Again, this sounds familiar. I feel like we've done this before. But anyways, they're driving off to a small little lake in the middle of nowhere where there's going to be a little skiff, a little raft, so to speak, where they're going to go swim, drink some beer, smoke some pot, all that jazz. Well, there's a little, how do I put this? Gelatinous cube, so to speak, or just something really, really rotten in the lake. And unfortunately, it starts devouring them off one by one. And now going on to the third story called The Hitchhiker, about a cheating wife who is running late from her affair to go and make it back home before her husband gets there. And while she's driving out in the middle of nowhere, yeah, they're all out in the middle of nowhere. This is deja vu all of a sudden. She accidentally hits a hitchhiker. And while she's trying to drive back home in the middle of all this, after she kills him, he keeps coming back to life and stalking her the entire time. Until he catches up with her, and she ends up dying from exhaust fumes in her garage, until her husband finds her. And yeah. Now it's time to talk about what I like and what I don't like about this movie. I'm going to start off with what I don't like about this movie. Now, I get it, sometimes having multiple stories throughout a movie, whether it be the Creepshow series, Tales from the Dark Side, The Twilight Zone, you name it, there are a lot of stories going on. So your attention span might kind of go, after 1 or 2 stories, I don't know if I can handle this. With the original Creepshow, there was so much going on, and so many different stories. In this one, it felt like they were in one space in each story. Like, even the driving, it was just from one place to another, from not very far away. The raft, okay, yeah, they were driving on the outskirts, but it was in areas where nobody could find you. Isolation. Now, I'm a big fan of isolation movies, but it just seemed very redundant in this situation. The other thing I didn't like is the fact is, in the original movie, I'm a fanatic for originals. I am. Even with sequels, I tend to look the other way unless, if they wow me, great. But this one, it didn't wow me as much because it seemed very short. Even when the movie was close to about an hour and a half long, it just felt like they dragged each story out a little bit too much. And that's where I was just kind of like, okay, they wanted to, narrow it down, but they didn't. Another thing that I was not too, keen on was the fact of lack of star power. In the original Creepshow, you had so many faces. You had Leslie Nielsen, you had Ted Danson, you had Ed Harris, you had E.G. Marshall, even Stephen King. There were so many famous names in that movie. And in the sequel, the only one they could really afford was George Kennedy. Now, don't get me wrong. It's awesome. He was very great in so many movies like Cool Hand Luke and even, the Naked Gun series. But it's just, they had him and Stephen King, and the rest of the list was just kind of meh. Okay, I'll backtrack. Tom Savini did play the creep at the beginning of the movie with his very, very great special effects makeup. So, yeah, okay, Tom Savini, you rule. The big thing I like about this that separates it from the original is that in the original, it just went from story to story to story. In this one, you have a little boy named Billy that's just dying to get the next copy of Creepshow from the presses. And in between each segment, even at the beginning, it starts off live action, and then it transitions into animation. And then it stays in animation in the transitions between each story. And you go from him getting his copy of Creepshow, then he goes to the post office and gets a special item that he ordered from the magazine. And then the next situation between the stories is he runs into a gang of bullies. And then after that, at the end, you get to see what he bought from the magazine, which was giant Venus flytraps that kill his bullies. And that's actually pretty cool, because it's like you get a story within a story within a story. So I will give them credit for that one. Now it's time to grade this movie. Now, I know that I'm a very diehard of the original, and I have kind of dogged the sequel a little bit, but I will be fair, and I will give Creepshow 2 a B+. I'll be fair, because you know what? Even though there's only 3 stories in this movie, and a lot of lack of acting, I guess I should say, or star power. Yeah, I'll just say star power. Lack of star power. You know what? George Kennedy did what he could. So did Stephen King in the 3rd story, but that's beside the point. B+. Well, we hope you enjoyed this quick episode of Creepshow 2. Make sure that you leave a thumbs up, and if you didn't agree with everything I said, you can leave a thumbs down. I totally get it. Also, make sure that you push that little red button and ring the bell for instant notifications on upcoming Shocktoberfest episodes on Dragonfire Entertainment. Until then, I'm Wildman Wes, and we will see you tomorrow for Day 5 of Shocktoberfest 2023. Take care, and as always, stay scared.